I think there are two terms that come to my mind, and one of them came to my mind as I was listening to Cheryl this morning, and it's two words. It's persistent patience. You've got to know that this is a long, as some people say, it's a marathon. It is not a short-term race. This is something that is going to take a long, long time for you to build what second term is relationships. And those are relationships that are meaningful and important to you as what you're trying to do, but also relationships that exist with the people in the community, people who are decision makers and can help you. And I call them in a way, Shirley and I have done this before, call them champions. They are your champions, but they're in the right position to be a champion. The first time that this hit me was some years ago. Nan Smith and I got an invitation to have lunch with the mayor and the city manager of Camden, South Carolina. And we went over and they described the plans for the Camden Tennis Center. And what struck me almost immediately was the enthusiasm that the mayor and the city manager had for this tennis center, what it was going to mean for the city of Camden. And we then went to lunch, and I sat beside the mayor, and he told me immediately, I don't play tennis. I don't know very much about tennis, but the city manager is the person who convinced me of how important this was. I play in Camden. I don't know how many people have visited the Camden facility. It is a wonderful facility and attracts a lot of people from the area to play. After that luncheon in Camden, Cheryl and I and another person drove to Florence, South Carolina, sat down with two people at the Floyd Tennis Center. And again, it was so important to me to hear, because these were two citizens. These were not people that made decisions, but they talked about how enthusiastic the community is and people at the higher level of politics were for that center. And that's a beautiful center if you've been there. So we have an interesting political situation in Columbia and Richmond County. We have the Richmond County Recreation Commission, and they have their courts. We have the City of Columbia, and they have their courts, and they don't meet. So if you want to do something in terms of facilities in Richmond County, that's the Recreation Commission. If you want to do it in the City of Columbia, that's the City of Columbia. And so there are two different governing bodies. I think this was questions while ago. So I happen to know the chairman of the Richmond County Recreation Commission, Rob Levine, and we had talked about parkland. One of the problems we have in Columbia, we'll hear a different situation, I think, that Charleston maybe has run out of capacity. Well, we have capacity, but the courts are so terrible that nobody wants to play them. And so what we need to do is we need to convince the two governing bodies that they need to pay attention to their facilities. And sustainability has to be a very important part of a facility. If you're going to have a facility, you've got to sustain those facilities. And so we met with Seth, we talked about parkland. And so I called Rob and I said, Rob, you have the flagship facility of Richmond County on Parkland Road, right across from the offices. And I said, have you ever looked at those courts? And unfortunately, he said, no, I haven't. I've never looked at them. It worked to get people elected to governing bodies. And you're one step ahead of the game, because then you have a chance you need to find people who are interested in tennis who understand tennis, who understand tennis facilities, and are willing to go to bat and put together a presentation to what I'm going to call RCRC, County Recreation. We did that, and the people said, this is really very interesting, and we understand that it's a problem, but we don't have any money. And I thought, okay, here we go. And this is where this patient persistence comes in. You're going to have to decide, okay, somebody told me no. What do I do now? And I talked to Shirley, and Shirley said, well, we need to talk to him again. And we did, Shirley and I this time. And we got the same situation. We're talking, we do. All our money comes from Richland County Council. Well, because she knows everybody on county council. And she knows very well the chair who used to work with Paul Livingston. And so she talked to Paul, and we went from there. As Seth mentioned, Shirley and I made phone calls and sent emails to county council. And we asked them for $325,000 to totally redo Parkland facility, knowing that there was asbestos, and that was going to have to be part of this reconstruction of the court. And so, after a lot of going on and there was a vote one night, and Shirley said, "Well, we thought it was going to come from this spot. It didn't come from that spot. That doesn't matter to us. Where it comes from. The thing is, it's money, it's spendable. We got what we wanted." So we got $325,000.
Didn't it come from the hospitality tax bucket, or initially? Initially.
Right. And so that is done. And I will tell you that there's no shade on those courts. And the Columbia Tennis Association stepped up. And Smith and her folks stepped up and helped us pay for half a shade on the courts, and they are being used as we speak. Shirley and I then talked about, okay, what's next? And what was next is the city of Columbia. And I have a pretty good friend who's assistant city manager, and Shirley knows him very well, Henry Simons. And Henry is a champion for us and works with us. And we primarily work for the Columbia Tennis Center, which Seth said is right in the middle of Columbia. And so we have gone through a number of facility improvements there. They have clay courts to play, have a lot of algae, has that. We talked Henry into moving money out of him, another bucket, to redo the clay courts. And now he's trying to get the courts resurfaced to hard courts. Thanks again to Shirley and Henry. We last week met with the mayor of Columbia. Shirley also reminded him they just had a state tournament in Lexington. We don't have courts where we can even have a state. We have got to pay attention to these courts.
Really, I've been playing tennis since, well, a long time, since college, and I had never become involved in any kind of advocacy. I really never thought about it until Jerry called me and said, "You're going to do this." Now, he was my provost and he was my dean, and so I said, "Yes, sir." The thing that I always think about when people ask me, how do I go about advocating or lobbying for something, I always advise them, of a few things. But the most important thing is to know where the money is. You got to know where it is and know who controls it. So we knew that Richland County Council had that money, and we knew that the chair of Richland County Council was going to have a heck of a lot to do with how that money was going to be spent. But we also knew that Park Lane was in the district of a new county council member, and we needed to have her on board. We needed to get her excited. We needed to let her know what people were saying about that facility over in her district and how, it's a safety issue and how she needed to get on top of that, because you're a new council member and you don't want this happening on your watch. And so she was immediately willing to get on board, but she didn't know how to make it happen. And that's where the champion comes in. Seth Rose was the champion for Divine Street. Jerry asked him, what is the process? Well, unfortunately, we who go to the State House every day know that there is no process. I mean, there is no how-to book. You know, you find yourself, you know where the money is, and you find yourself a champion who can influence the people that appropriate the money, and then that's the process. I mean, it's always different. It's always different. There are lots of landmines. There are a lot of political considerations, a lot of personal agendas. I mean, you just have to get in there and figure it out, and that's what we had to do. We started out with one pot of money and then ended up with another pot. We didn't care. We just, all of the money was green to us, and so that's the way that happened. And even though we were able to get commitments from the chair and from the local council member, we still didn't know until the very last moment. We were sweating it out, y'all. When they were meeting on the budget, that last night Jerry and I were on the computer because we couldn't be there in person. It was during COVID, and we were listening, I mean, for hours, trying to wait for them to get to our item. And when they finally did, we breathed a sigh of relief. With the city and the county and the state, we have to pull them together, and that's what we're attempting to do now with the mayor. I was so encouraged by our meeting with him, because he said, well, the other thing that you always have to do, of course, is to have a plan and to have a budget, to know how much money you're asking for, how you're going to spend it, and the folks who are going to be making the decisions want to have some confidence that you know what you're doing and that you're giving them some accurate information. And so I was encouraged that the mayor has said, along with something that can handle sustainability, the maintenance of a facility, so that we can try to build a state-of-the-art tennis center for the Midlands, for Richland County and the city of Columbia. He knows that the economic impact will be felt in the city of Columbia, and that Columbia residents will, you know, venture out into the county to play tennis. So we have a plan in our minds to try to pull the city, that is the mayor, and county council, its chair, and then a member of the legislative delegation, and have them to create a little coalition together and try to go after designing and coming up with a plan, and then going after some funding. Seth was exactly right when he said that it always helps if you, one, have the neighbors' support. I remember recently Irmo, the city of Irmo was going to build a new main street, and they had all these grandiose plans and this big, you know, news conference and, you know, big old spread in the newspaper. But guess what? They forgot to ask the people whose property they were going to go straight through. And that never got off the ground, y'all. That's really, really, really not a smart way to go about it. You've got to have the support of the neighborhoods before. We just have to understand that people who are elected respond to people who vote for them and people who give them money. I mean, they just do. So in our situation, we dealt with our members of the county council on a whole lot of different levels. We made sure that we had tennis people, you know, contacting them. We made sure that we had folks who, you know, who they felt was important to their future as a member of that county council, to reach out to them, and that's how we got that money. And I believe that is how we're going to eventually end up with a world-class tennis center in Richland County. Because we don't want to have the city and the county and the state fighting each other. And so we're going to try to have them join together on the front end of the process and become allies. And I believe that that way is going to happen.
We had a huge referendum that did not pass in, I believe it was in 2019 or 18, it did not pass. So I started to help them in working on getting it passed. And as of yesterday, I was just informed that we have 3.25 million to work with. So my efforts of sitting on an advisory committee, actually standing on the pavement of 17, Highway 17 with my signage and cars blowing me almost off the road. And I've had a lot of help with advocacy as far as council people. But I do things a little different. I'm like Willy Wonka, reverse that, strike that. I pound the pavement and I go and I build programs in these places and look at your place and say, now what do we do? And then that's where we go from there. So, and we've done that at Hanahan, and they now have 6 brand new courts. We did that with up in North Charleston, and they are going to have 5 new courts in North Charleston. And I have built several relationships, one of them with Madison Keys, that has been very instrumental. And, you know, I'm just trying to think in Somerville, you know, with Doty Park. But the one thing that I would say, and this is what I told Bill, that has been very important for me, is that pickleball was a huge voice at all these meetings I was going to. And I said, their voice is loud, and we've been passive. We've sat back, and we've just left them do that. And I like pickleball, don't get me wrong. But I said, we need to be vocal, but we have to go in and be positive about the way we go in to these meetings and what we're gonna do for them and show them. And that's what we did at Mount Pleasant. We showed them that we were losing 3 to 5 teams just at Mount Pleasant Rec per season because we didn't have enough courts. So now my job is really gonna become a little bit harder because now I've got to push everybody in Mount Pleasant to be at the meetings, to get them on the ball, to make sure the design happens and that we get it built. So we're not waiting another 5 years. So anyways, that's me.
So I'll follow it up quickly because I'm going to go through this presentation. So I'm going to give you a quick 5-minute rundown for this presentation that you have in front of you. And it's good insight at a grassroots level in terms of what we're doing. So Mount Pleasant is by far our largest tennis facility. They have over 1,000 members. And we were getting email after email from them saying that, and the players that they were shutting down, that they weren't going to allow any more players. They weren't going to register any more teams. They were at capacity. And that meant that if they didn't grow, we weren't going to grow. And so we caucused, April and I and several others, in terms of what's the best way to approach it. And then we found out that the Mount Pleasant Town Council was going to try to adopt a $40 million referendum, $50 million if you count interest, to build a central park in the middle of Mount Pleasant. When we looked at it, there was no tennis whatsoever recognized in what they were trying to do, 0. So we decided that's not going to work. They're going to have to add tennis into it. And we learned. So we started to figure out what's the best way to present to the town council. And we went through a couple of different iterations before we got to this. And I didn't know it the first time that I went to speak to the town council. You have a 2-minute time limit, and I had about a 5-minute speech. And so you go up there and it's packed. There were a couple hundred people there, and you have the media, reporters, etc. So I got up to do my 5-minute speech, and I was watching this big red teleprompter that was telling me how much time I had. And I thought they would let me go, but they didn't. So when it got to 2 minutes, I was halfway through, and it was like a game show. They went, and I was off, and I shrunk back to my seat and sat down. And so I became.
You were warned, then. You were warned.
So I became the world's best 3-minute speech maker. And so we came back with this. This is about increasing court capacity. And this is what we were trying to do. We were trying to have them carve out a piece of the $40 million and give it to tennis. To build new tennis courts in the Central Park, and then to enhance the existing Mount Pleasant Tennis Center that needed more tennis courts and was in disrepair. So I will tell you, because it came up when we were talking about it before, the best thing to do is be diplomatic, but tell them exactly what you're looking for, what you want. Don't sugarcoat it, and get right to the point, because you have 3 minutes. Bullet point here. This is what we're telling them. The growth in Mount Pleasant has created an environment of total capacity tennis for the town, where all the tennis courts that are available are being used. But the growth of Mount Pleasant players continues to grow at a double-digit clip, overwhelming the capacity and creating issues for the players. And what we told them is, God bless you, is that of our makeup, we're approaching 80% women in our leagues. And our average age is at 55 years old. And so those are our demographics, and that strata votes. And we made sure that they knew that they had a lot of people that wanted tennis courts. And we had people come to the meeting as well, dressed in tennis togs, making sure that they knew that we wanted more tennis courts. They didn't realize how big we were. As we told them, we were 4,400 tennis players. 3,000 which are women, 1,500 men. Right now we're at 4,800. I mean, since we did this, and we're growing at a 6 to 10% clip a year. If we grow at 10%, that's 500 new players a year, and we don't have any new tennis courts. And Mount Pleasant had doubled their population in 10 years. They went from 50,000 to well over 100,000 people, and they had not added one tennis court over that period of time. So we showed them that if you look at this zip code data, this is our area, this is our geographic area that we give coverage to for the USDA, that Mount Pleasant has 1,400 tennis players. By far, you can see that's the biggest skyscraper that we have right there. So if you go to the next page, and this is another thing that they didn't realize, is that they went from 939 in 2018, COVID comes, the COVID wave begins, and also the Great Migration to the coastal Carolinas. And by 2021, it's at 1,400. Right now, it's almost 1,800 that are playing tennis. And so we told them, you need to do something about it. And what was happening, and it's still happening, but we'll end it, is that we were growing, instead of we moved from horizontal to vertical. So we have women's tennis teams, 3, 5, 18 women's tennis teams that can have 30 plus players, meaning that they're paying a fee, they're showing up, and they never play. And yet we still have people doing it because they love tennis, they want to play tennis. And if they're competitive teams, there's about 10 players that will probably do it a day. And that's what was happening. And so we have credit one, which was LTP Mount Pleasant, same thing. So we went back many times to these town council meetings. We have other examples, but with Mount Pleasant, we got up, we told them it, and then finally they told us, okay, we're going to carve up, we're going to build 5 new tennis courts, brand new tennis courts in Central Park, and we're going to earmark $3 million to refinish, add sparkle to the existing Muggsy Earth Tennis Center that has 1,000 people. And we worked hard for it. I mean, it isn't just through osmosis. I mean, we worked very hard. And so they did that. Then the referendum comes, the referendum is incredibly controversial. I mean, it created this huge social media storm, both on Facebook and Nextdoor. April Gift starts her own website. We become keyboard warriors, and we're fending off the people who are against paying a property tax, which is what they had to do in the referendum to build recreation and tennis courts. And then when it came to the couple of days to the election, there was April sitting at polling centers handing out flyers to individuals that were coming in to vote. 50,000 people voted on the referendum and it passed by 700 votes. And that's the power of advocacy.